Hello and welcome to yet another kind of TBR focused project. These are mainly coming from me trying to get through my backlist TBR and just thinking of interesting ways to do that, and also what people might want to watch, which I never know. But today I'm going to be reading the highest rated books on my TBR, and by today I mean all week. Whenever I'm off work, I do one of these. I have the next 9 days off, so I figured let's read some books because I don't do that anyway. I have 3 books that are the highest rated books on my TBR. There's no I didn't cut anything out. I didn't ignore books that I didn't own. One of them is from the library, 2 of them are from my shelves. I wanted to read the one from the library anyway, so I figured let's just do the top 3, bar none. So I'm gonna go through those books and then we'll get to the rest of the vlog of me reading them because I have high hopes. I did the lowest rated books on my TBR last month. I'll link that video down below if you're interested, and that was a fun time. This is a little more high pressure. Just when you're reading the lowest rated books, it's like, what is the worst case scenario? You go in expecting not to like them and they're bad. That's the expectation. When it's high rated books, it's like, if I don't absolutely love all 3 of these, it's going to be very heartbreaking. So no pressure. The highest rated of all the I don't know, over 1,000 books on my Goodreads TBR is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This has an average rating of 4.72 over 145,185 ratings. So it's quite popular and quite beloved. This is a memoir. Chanel Miller was the young woman who was raped by Brock Turner. Very famous trial case a few years back. And this is just her memoir. Her name hadn't been known until this book was published, and she decided to go public with her story and what she experienced and just her life in general and her thoughts on everything. I don't know. It's a memoir. It's nonfiction. I've wanted to read this for a long time, so I went to the library and got it. I know I'm supposed to be reading my backlist for these videos, but this has just been on my radar for a very long time, and it is the highest rated book that I have on my TBR, so why would I not just want to demolish it? I tried the audiobook of this a little while back and it didn't work for me. I really wanted to experience the physical version, so stoked on this one. The second highest rated book on my TBR is also nonfiction. Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Bryan Stevenson. This has an average rating of 4.63 over 202,198 ratings. So again, even more popular and basically as much beloved. Bryan Stevenson is a lawyer who funded the Equal Justice Initiative, essentially defending poor people and people who've been wrongfully convicted. This focuses on one story particular early on in his career about a Black man who was wrongfully convicted for the murder of a white woman, and he was put on death row for this, and basically how they work to get him off of death row, I assume. I don't know any details about this. I've just heard wonderful things, and I've wanted this for the longest time, and then I got a copy and didn't read it. So I like law stories, I like criminal justice, that's very, very interesting to me. So I feel like this is not only is this an important book, but I also feel like it's gonna hit all the right notes for my personal interests. And then the last book is the one I am most excited about, coming in with an average rating of 4.57 with 537 total ratings. Less popular, The Road Home by Emerson White, because I talk about her constantly. She is my favorite author. I love her so much, and it's just so validating to have her on this list. These are just my top 3 out of over 1,000 books, so it's quite validating to have her in the top 3. She's not widely read, but she is quite beloved among those who read her. This is historical fiction, YA, I think, but it's kind of like YA stretching into adult because I think the main characters are all in their 20s. It's set after the Vietnam War. She wrote a quartet called the Echo Company series about the Vietnam War, focusing on a group of boys and a nurse, female nurse, who were in Vietnam during the war. And this focuses on Rebecca, who was the nurse, after she comes home. And I think some of the other boys who were over there make appearances in this book. But she told me once that this was her favorite book that she'd ever written. So I have very high expectations, and I adored the Echo Company series. I read all 4 of them last month, kind of like preparing for this, because I was like, if I'm gonna do this video, I'm going to include this book. So I had to read all of those, and they were so wonderful. And like, everyone talks like this book is so much better. So like, I'm stoked. Like, it was the hardest thing, not just continuing on with this after that series, but also like ending that series and knowing that there's not going to be any more will break my heart. But just in case you didn't believe me that she is a wonderful writer, this is in the top 3. And I can check. I have well over 1,000 books on my want to read. I have 1,025 books on my want to read shelf. And of all of those, this is the 3rd most highly rated. So you should read Ellen Emerson White if you haven't already. And I'm very excited to get to all of these, and I will check back in when I've made progress on one of them. I was planning on brushing my hair and looking like a person before I filmed any updates, but I'm just like not emotionally capable of that anymore. I have started reading. I went with Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I forgot what this is called for a second. This is just maybe like the most painful thing I've ever read, like genuinely, because like I read a lot of nonfiction about people who have been victims of whatever, childhood traumas, rapes later in life, like genocides. Like, I read a lot of sad things, but this is just like the way she writes it just hits really hard, and I'm having like genuinely a difficult time getting through this. Like, I am 5 chapters in, I have like more than 200 pages left to read, and I keep just having like every chapter, they average like 25 pages. I have to stop and like go play stupid games on my phone to like get through it. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I've been reading this for a couple hours this morning, and it's like amazing. Like, it is so amazing. Like, she's such an amazing writer, like genuinely, like apart from like the horrifying experience, she's a wonderful writer, which makes it so much harder to read because she's so good at capturing her own pain and her own like experiences, and it's just really hard to read. I would like this is gonna be 5 stars for me. This is amazing, but like it is so difficult to read. Like, I do highly recommend it, but it's just like, Jesus Christ, like, I understand why people wouldn't want to read this or wouldn't be able to finish it. But it's so wonderful. Like, she is genuinely a fantastic writer. Like, it's beautifully written, and that makes it worse. So I'm making more progress on this. I'm probably going to be reading this most of today just because I can't like sit down and binge through it the way I would ordinarily. So it's kind of a slower pace, like read for 15 minutes and then go play like phone games or scroll through Instagram for 15 minutes just mindlessly. But I'm gonna get back to reading. So it's about 6 p.m. 5 p.m. It's about 5 p.m. and I have just finished this. I've been reading this since about 6 a.m. this morning. Not straight through, but like in general, on and off. I just didn't want to put it down. It's the kind of thing that like it hurts, but you gotta finish it, is how I felt. 5 stars. This is maybe the best thing I've read this year. Her writing is astounding. Like, I mean, like, her story is tragic and she has a lot of interesting things to say. And, like, I've read other stories of victims before, and I don't want to diminish that in any capacity because sharing their stories is important. But this is, like, more than that, even. This is so insightful and so well written, and the best thing that I've read this year. I was gonna film myself reading this but I didn't want to because, like, I was just crying through a lot of this, and, like, ugly crying, you know? Like, sometimes I read books and I cry a little and, like, a tear streaks down my face and it's, like, lovely crying. And then, like, this was just, like, me snorting with sobs at points. I would highly recommend this if you can handle it. And I don't mean that in, like, an insulting way. I just know, like, this was a really, really difficult read. Potentially the best thing I've read this year, but also, like, the hardest thing that I've read this year. It was wonderful, but so painful. Like, one of the most painful reading experiences that I've ever had. Highly, highly recommend. She has so much to say that I think needs to be heard, and just, I think more people need to listen. So that was an interesting first day of this video. I don't think I'll be continuing on to one of the other books next. I need to go read something happy, but probably tomorrow or something I will be back with my next book. This was a wild place to start, and judging by what I know from the next two books, I might be crying during those too. So go read this if you haven't, and if you don't feel up to it, she has a victim impact statement that's widely available online. It's like 20 pages or something, 12 pages, I don't know, it's something. If you just look up the Stanford rape victim, or Chanel Miller at this point, Emily Doe, her victim impact statement is widely available online, and I highly recommend that if you're not up to reading this whole book. Very, very important statement, and so well written too, and just powerful. I have made good progress on Just Mercy. I'm about probably a little short of halfway, but so far this is really interesting. Like, it's not, I don't want to say it's not as sad as Chanel Miller's book, because it is. It's just as sad, but it's written in a different way, whereas her book was, like, the emphasis was on the emotion and everything she went through and her feelings, and, like, it was just like entirely emotion based. This is less so. Like, it's still sad, like I still have cried, but this is a lot more about, like, the law processes, and he's focusing on this one particular case he had. It's not just about this one man, it's also about like his own story. Bryan Stevenson, the lawyer, and, like, his organization that he created to fight for people who are either poor and can't afford it, or who are on death row, or who are children, or, like, anyone who needs justice. And it's really wonderfully done. Like, it's a very important story. Like, it's interesting because he does talk about a lot of different cases he has, in addition to Walter McMillian. I think that's his name. Yeah. It focuses on Walter McMillian, who's on death row for the murder of a young woman. He's Black, the young woman was white. He had an alibi, and basically he was in prison based off the testimony of two men who were not very believable. So he's an innocent man. But Stevenson also talks about, like, his other clients, like clients who are guilty, who might be children, who have other mitigating circumstances, or who are just, like, guilty, but he's still fighting for their lives, and it's really wonderfully done. Like, I'm enjoying this quite a bit. I don't know if it's gonna be 5 stars, we'll see, but it's definitely, like, absolutely a fantastic book. Here with my update. It took me a couple days, but I did get through this book, taking my time. This was definitely, like, a take your time kind of book. I cried during this one a couple of times, a couple different spots, about a couple different things, but overall, this was not intended to be like an emotion heavy book. Like, this is very like information based, like intentionally so, because like Chanel Miller's book was supposed to be emotional, and this is like, it is very emotional because a lot of things that happen in it are just like very sad. Seems like such an inadequate word, but like, you know what I mean. Like, it is talking about many sad things, because like basically the goal of his organization is to defend people who don't have anyone else to defend them, especially people on death row, people who were wrongfully convicted or like may have been wrongfully convicted, people who experienced a lot of like racial bias in their trials, which might have led to like an unfair conviction. I'm trying to think what else. Children who were, did I mention children? But children who were convicted of crimes and sentenced to like life in prison or the death penalty, as you know, children. And it's just like, he talks about a lot of cases. Like, most of the book focuses on the one man who was wrongfully convicted, and he talks a lot about like Walter McMillian and like his past. Like, he is the case study for this, kind of, just to like give you one person to really focus on. But he talks about so many different people in this, and it's just like really important. Like, it's a very worthwhile book, and it's very interesting. And Bryan Stevenson has done so much good work, like getting people who were convicted at like 13 to life imprisonment out of prison finally, like years and years later, decades and decades later, honestly, in many cases. And just, it's wonderful. I mean, a lot of this is like, he's strongly opposed to the death penalty for like a great many reasons. So like, I like legal stuff. I used to read a lot of law books, so it's like, I was always, between that and the death penalty, I was always gonna like this. I was very predisposed to this book's favor, but it's wonderful. I highly recommend. If you haven't picked this up, you definitely should, because I think you will learn a lot, and also it just like opens your eyes to a lot of the injustices that occur within our current system. And it's just, it's very worthwhile and very interesting. He does a great job at like tying all the information together. So I love this. 5 stars. I didn't say that. I wasn't sure like towards the beginning if this was going to be the full 5 stars, but it was just, the more I read, the more I enjoyed it. So 5 stars. And then the next book that I'm going to read, a little bit of a departure from like the 2 very serious nonfiction books I just read. The Road Home by Emerson, which I think is YA, but all the main characters in that are adults, so I'm not entirely certain it's like real YA. I think it's more like, if new adult was the genre, like a real genre, I feel like it'd be new adult. But I gotta read that. But I've just spent a lot of time like crying and sad because of this video, which like, amazing books, 10 out of 10 so far, but like, I'm very sad. I don't want to cry right now. So I might like put that off for today. I don't want to, I'm just not emotionally prepared for that one. I read the synopsis of it and I was like, oh no, I'm really going to love this one. Like, this is written specifically for me. Like, before I was born, but specifically for me. So, yeah, I'll come back when I've made some progress on that one. So I have started The Road Home. Thank you. That's basically the sound I was making while reading this, just like ugly crying. I'm about 100 pages in. This book is just shy of 500 pages. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to read it because it is so good. Like, oh, it is so good. Like, this might be one of the best books I've ever read. Like, oh my god. This is definitely Emerson at her best. Like, I mean, I don't know if it's better than Long May She Reign, but it's very similar in a lot of the things I loved about it. And it's just so fantastically done. Like, it's gonna be 5 stars. Like, I'm only like 25% into this book, but like, it's gonna be 5 stars. Yeah, but I had to stop at 100 pages because like, I got to a point where I was just like, I mean, for starters, I started crying in the first 10 pages, which I don't think was the book itself. I think I just kind of have like a trauma response to her writing style now. Like, I've read it so much and I've cried during it so much that I read it and I'm just like, oh my god, the saddest thing ever is about to happen. I'm gonna cry. So I just start crying in advance of the sad thing because, like, I know it's gonna be sad. So then, like, by the time it gets sad, I'm already crying, so I just cry harder. Yeah. So, like, by the time I got to 100 pages in, I was, like, ugly crying so hard I couldn't see the page, so I had to put it down. And now I'm reading a nonfiction book about games because I was like, I need something that's not gonna make me sad. And I was like, this seems like the thing that will not make me sad. So I will be coming back to this every day until I finish it. This will not be a book that I take to work. This will be a book that I read when I'm home alone and no one is here to look at me just ugly sobbing on the floor. So, would highly recommend though. Oh, this is about a girl who's a nurse in Vietnam. I thought it was all going to take place after Vietnam, but it's like, we're still in Vietnam 100 pages in. So, I'm expecting more deaths, more sadness, more tragedy. And I'm expecting it all just to, like, hurt in the worst possible way. Because, like, she started killing characters off the page. But the perspective we're getting in this is a different perspective from how we were introduced to the characters. Like, we were introduced to those characters by someone who was very close with them. And the main character of this, Rebecca, is not close with those characters. So they're, like, killing people off the page. And not only that, but you're getting the perspective of this character who doesn't even really care about them that much. Like she does. Like, she is sad. She's like, oh, I met that guy. Like, it's very sad that he died. But, like, they weren't close. So, like, it's more, like, abstract sadness. And I'm sitting here like, he deserved better. Like, it's so sad. So, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna come back to this today. This hurts my soul. Actually, every book in this video has hurt me so badly. Everybody's right about these books, though. Like, y'all have taste. So thank the world for highly rating these, because all these books deserve it. But I'll be back when I made more progress and I just come back to cry over this. And also, I'm not going to film myself reading this at all, because, like, if I cry a little bit, I can live with that. But I'm, like, ugly sobbing over here. And y'all don't need to see me doing that. I do have a little bit of self-respect. I have finished the road home, which means I have finished this video, which is why I've actually set up the tripod and am filming in front of my shelves. This was fantastic. 5 stars. Definitely one of my favorite books that I've ever read. Seems a little bit unfair to be comparing this to, like, 2 nonfiction books about very real issues, but, like, this is wonderfully written. I love Ellen Emerson White. This is definitely one of her best books. Like, I'm not sure if it is her best book, but it's definitely, like, top 2. This was really sad. I did finish it in 2 days, but it took me a little bit of time. I'm not gonna lie. Just because I just kept crying and then I would have to put it down, and it was wonderful. It was so sad and so bittersweet and so happy and, like, all of these things all at the same time. And, like, people are awful, but people are also wonderful, and I highly recommend this book. So that concludes this video. Huzzah! This was a success in the fact that I read these 3 books and I loved these 3 books. This was not a success in the fact that I spent a great deal of this week crying. This was a very sad week. All of these books are very emotionally heavy, and I highly recommend reading all of them because, like, they are all 5 out of 5 stars fantastic. Like, 3 of the best books that I've read this year. But I would not recommend reading them all in the same week because that is a lot. But do recommend. If any of these sound good to you, I would seriously check them out because they're very worthwhile reads. They're all fantastically written. They all have great stories and great people involved and just, like, wonderful, wonderful books. So definitely go read them all. I had a great time reading them, even if they were very sad and tragic and just, like, absolutely heart-wrenching to the nth degree. But yeah, let me know down below if you've read any of these or if you plan to read any of these. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all again soon.